Here is your WESN News on the Hour. I'm Naomi McNish. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. Bankers Association assures Forex allocation compliance with central bank policies. Police seize over $1 million in marijuana during Couva raid. Farmers withdraw land claim against airport authority. And internationally, Boeing workers end strike with new pay deal. Now for the details. The Bankers Association of Trinidad and Tobago says its members are committed to managing foreign exchange within the guidelines set by the central bank. In a release today, BAT confirmed that banks adhere to strict policies on forex allocation and are required to report daily transactions to the central bank. BAT noted that banks receive a fixed forex allocation and are bound to follow specific pricing guidelines, including a cap on the rate at which foreign currency can be purchased. The association acknowledged the ongoing foreign exchange challenges and expressed its commitment to working with the government to find solutions for the business sector and the public. In an anti-crime operation in Couva, Central Division Police seized over 22 kilograms of marijuana with an estimated street value of $1.25 million. The raid took place on November 3rd at an abandoned structure on Reservoir Road Extension in Baxter Hall, where officers found 5 bags containing high-grade marijuana. No arrests have been made in connection with the drugs, and police say investigations are ongoing. A farmer and his wife have withdrawn their lawsuit against the Airports Authority of Trinidad and Tobago over 14 acres at the Piarco Airport estate. The couple, Mitchell and Vidya Sankar, had sought compensation for alleged trespass, claiming they'd farmed the land exclusively for almost 20 years. The trial, which started on November 4th, saw testimony from their expert witness before they decided to drop the case. The AATT agreed to allow the Sankars to harvest their crops on the land for the next 6 months. Justice Frank C. Prasad praised both sides for resolving the matter and made no orders for costs. Internationally, Boeing workers in the U.S. have voted to accept a new contract, ending a 7-week strike that slowed production at the aviation giant. The deal grants a 38% pay raise for over 4 years, a $12,000 bonus, and retirement plan improvements. Roughly 30,000 workers walked out on September 13th, pushing Boeing into further financial strain, with the recent losses reaching $4 billion and layoffs expected to affect 17,000 employees in November. Boeing CEO Kelly Ortberg acknowledged the challenges, urging unity to restore the company's reputation. U.S. Labor Secretary Julie Su previously intervened in the dispute, underscoring its national significance. Well, that's news to the hour on WESN. I'm Naomi McNish. Thanks for watching.
WESN.
I can't see nothing. I can't see anything. I can't see anything. Well, that was unexpected. So, good morning. Ironically, as sudden as this may be, it is a interesting morning that we have woken up to with regards to the elephant in the room, the American election. With what has happened, I do wonder what the reaction would be in TNT. Mainly because we seemingly pay a lot of attention to what's going on up north. But Ironically, I wasn't necessarily looking for specific results. I have concerns with either candidate, but I think what came out of this that did get me excited is not who won, but rather how these elections played out with regards to the voters. We could kind of take the easy road of we don't like Trump, or even some people might not like Harris. She's less of a known entity, so the feelings against her may not directly be as strong. But the reality is, and one of the things that I've tried to talk about with local politics is to not oversimplify things. The election was ultimately about cultural perception more than policy issues, but I do think at the end of the day, some of the basic key points of policy colored people's perceptions on those cultural divides. Because voters did not seem to be sticking to party lines. A state that elected Trump may have elected a Democratic senator. A state that went to Harris may have elected a Republican senator. Republican states, over certain issues, broke away from their traditional party's position. Abortion rights, an issue that I think the arguments are outdated and both sides need to essentially re-engineer their talking points, their policy positions, and base it more on medical science in 2024 as opposed to Roe v. Wade, which was a ruling in 1984, if my memory serves correct. That seemingly now, what could have been an issue or what was tried to be made into a national issue. Donald Trump's Supreme Court was the Supreme Court that overturned Roe v. Wade, and now he's going to come and be the big boogeyman, and maybe he will try to do something on a national level. It will go against his policy position of initially stating leave it up to the states to decide, and by leaving up to the states to decide, some Republican states voted for abortion rights while voting for Donald Trump. They have looked at the individual issues and made a determination based on their desires for each individual issue, as opposed to, well, this one issue is the most important thing for me, therefore I have to vote Republican or Democrat down the board. And it seems as though, ever so slightly, in some ways, party politics in America has changed. And it's changed in a way, maybe not completely what I would like to see. Maybe I would like to see it go further, or maybe it's gone too far in some places, but it's changed in a way that I wish I could see in TNT, where it's not about the party is this, so everything now has to be for this party. Every decision has to be for this party. Where maybe you could vote for a candidate despite potentially, you see, this is the issue with regards to how our government is set up. And this is why I did start to think that American politics kind of devolved into opposition for opposing's sake, kind of what we do. People might say, why are they put us down? Well, I mean, our politics is a bit ridiculous with all the bubble and bacchanal. And that's what was happening in America, Canada, maybe not so much the United Kingdom, but then again, some of their parliamentary sessions could be quite boisterous. But here we see, yes, there are negatives with the American system diluting power so much that it makes things difficult. They are slower than a more centrally concentrated system. But here we see, because of that, voters, and this is ironic because there's a chance the Republicans might win both the Senate and the House of Representatives, giving the Republican Party complete executive and legislature control, but maybe not with the kind of majorities needed to pass some extreme things. But the point that the voters to some extent, they were looking at, my senator does not have to be the same party as the person I'll vote with for president. It's not about party. And because it's so split, they have the opportunity to do that. We don't. We just vote for MPs. Senators are appointed. The cabinet comes from the MPs. The prime minister is an MP. So there is no world where the political leader might get more support than those going up for the House, because we kind of boil our politics up and simmer it down into one vote. Yeah. Technically, you're voting for your MP, but really it's a vote for the political leader, because you don't have an opportunity to decide, well, maybe I want the opposition candidate for my MP, but I do want the incumbent for my prime minister. We don't have that. And we don't even, and whoever has the majority in the House, in the lower house, essentially gets the upper house and the executive. It's just one vote. There is no capacity to really drill down to the issues, because at the end of the day, we only have one opportunity to let our voices be heard. So it's going to be spent on who we want as prime minister, and the candidates for members of parliament to some extent don't matter. And that's a shame. That's a shame. It's going to be interesting to see how Trinidadians continue to react. Is this result good for us or bad for us? I think that's one of the things where some experts, local commentators, may have dropped the ball. Climate change policies are not going to die because of Donald Trump. They already got affected globally because of COVID. Germany already reversed its stance on coal, an energy source that was supposed to be phased out in the Western world, is now one of the key pieces to ensure economic stability. And therein lies the point. If people have economic issues, climate change and climate issues are a luxury that they potentially can't afford in the immediate term. To some extent, that's why we ourselves in Trinidad could say, hey, don't do this, don't do that, be more careful with the environment. And it seems as though not a lot of people care because they're too busy dealing with the high cost of living. And it's the same thing in America. At the end of the day, all of the rigmarole of who is a good person, who's a bad person. There was one anti-Trump supporter who apparently, reportedly, voted for Trump because at the end of the day, he looked at his wallet and his standard of living. And he wants to vote Democrats, except he realized every time Democrats come in power, that's an issue. He didn't want to vote for a Republican candidate. So now the question is, he looked at policy. What are we going to do? Are we going to look at policy or are we going to look at race? Because it seems as though racial divides in America are slowly but surely being wiped away, for better or worse. And policy issues were at the root of the cultural divide, not racial issues or any other demographic issue, really, in my opinion. And I wonder if we would learn from that. Yes, we might not like the results. I think I said yesterday or the day before, I probably wouldn't like the result either way. But the process that got America there, I think, puts them in a better place for the future of their politics, despite the fact that it's still a very divided country, from where it was maybe 8 to 10 to 15 years ago, because it's no longer boiled down to race or some other sort of demographic dividing line which subverts merit, policy, and results. But we have to see. I don't know what he's going to do about the international stuff. That's what scares me the most with regards to Mr. Trump. But not that Harris, I think, had a handle on that either. And if he could get the cost of living in America down, technically that would be good for us because that would be a positive sign that we won't have to face food inflation. So we wait and see on that. Stock markets apparently responded very well to Mr. Trump. It's a sign that the economy of America might do better, so we might have less to fear about indirect consequences hitting us. Now, with that said, let's go into today's daily review. So, the Forex discussions continue. To be fair to the Minister of Finance, I can't say that he took a hardline stance to defend the government's position. So it's not necessarily accurate to say he's trying to backtrack after bad press from last week. But I do think to some extent he is trying to do a little bit of damage control. But the flip side is you could say it's not so much, it might not be so much damage control as maybe he's listening to the people and responding accordingly. So now it has come out that there are going to be discussions with stakeholders, some consultations to perhaps change the way how foreign exchange is distributed. Because right now it's done via commercial banks in something of an honor system. And there's a part of me that actually, I'm not entirely sure if I should think of that as being, well, should that really be how it is, an honor system? But then, of course, there is something to be said about not over-regulating commercial enterprises. And a bank, at the end of the day, is a commercial enterprise. For an exchange, I do think maybe leaving it to market forces might be better. And in theory, more regulation will potentially get in the way of that. Of course, the big 300-pound elephant with regards to this particular discussion, the room it inhabits, would be it's an honor system, so is everything above board? And I guess that's ultimately one of the reasons why this is being looked at. People want to know that the system is fair, and they kind of can't, because one of the things about an honor system is we leave it up to you. We don't have oversight or proactive measures to oversee and correct any issues with what's going on. That's the whole thing about an honor system. We leave it up to you being honorable, you being the banks. And it's not to say that the banks are acting dishonorably. It's that there is no measurement record, there is no publication, there is not enough information to make that determination on what's going on. The thing is, just because an entity wants to keep something secret doesn't mean that it's because they're covering up corruption or covering up something bad, right? They could have commercial reasons why. One of the things are the NDAs for a lot of the oil deals. Well, part of it is these international companies do not want to reveal their positions that they've accepted or the terms they've accepted with our deals, because it could negatively impact their negotiations with other countries. You see it in sports where an athlete gets a contract, the next athlete, they want a bigger contract. The news of the results of what happened previously will color contract negotiations for athletes moving forward, usually pushing their price up. So if our banks want to keep something secret, it's not necessarily saying, hey, we are taking advantage of the population. It could be that, look, they have certain interests, certain reasons why for their business they need to keep it secret, and they might be acting honorably. The problem is we no longer could afford to assume the best. because the situation has depreciated over time. So now the question is, though, it's one thing to say that we might change the distribution system, we'll have consultations. I do have issues with regards to implementation. And to be fair, if this was the UNC doing this, I probably would still have issues. Again, it's not about people doing things in bad faith. It is literally a question about competency. I have doubts about competency to implement technical things in TNT across the board because we have not voted based on merit. We have not voted, therefore, based on skill. We have not voted based on proficiency. So why are we assuming that our best and brightest are the individuals who make up our elected officials? They're not our best and brightest. They're the ones who played the, well, in Washington, it would be the Potomac two-step. In TNT, I don't know, the Carnegie two-step, the Gulf of Paria two-step. The ones that play the game the best. It's not even necessarily a popularity contest because the internal situations and the external situations of our democracy and our political parties are very, very different. An MP could be unpopular, but if he has the right symbol next to his name, he's going to get in because his seat is a safe seat, at least traditionally. So, yeah. We're at a time where we need really, really good implementation, and I don't know if we have that. Right now, the government's track record on implementation of new policies is not that great, but Kamala Persad-Bissessar and her People's Partnership track record is not really that much better, and some people might argue it's not better. That's a very... I can't go into that level of detail on it here now. But one thing I want to hit before we take the break and welcome my colleague, the good lady herself. While the big news item will be what's going on with the PNM. Let's not forget that not too long ago, it was what's going on within UNC. And that situation is not entirely been put to rest. I think the opposition party wants to try to pull itself back out of the public spotlight. Obviously, if the PNM are going to potentially implode, you don't want to muddy the waters and have your own internal breakdowns also be in the public spotlight. But one opposition MP, Dr. Rai Ragbir, he is questioning with regards to the professionalism and organization behind the UNC screening process for candidates in the upcoming general election. So with that said, there's smoke, we don't know if there's fire, but it's in line with what has been said about the UNC before. How much of that should we believe? Well, here's the thing. And I think this has come out of the American election, where towards the end of Biden's campaign, there were people who were saying, look, just because I don't support Trump doesn't mean I can't now criticize Kamala Harris. Just because you don't support the PNM, it doesn't mean you have to cover up what's going on in the UNC. You have to take it how it comes. You add it up, both sides at the end of the day, make your final decision. To just say that you're going to be biased for the PNM or the UNC, and that means that we must ignore, suppress, and decry criticisms for our side. That's not how this works. If we want better performance, we need to look at meritocracy. And if we want to look at meritocracy, we have to be willing to criticize any and everybody who deserves criticism. So, while the PNM has their stuff in the forefront, we should not necessarily neglect looking at the opposition party, the UNC, with a critical eye. And maybe they do come out looking better, but we should do so based on measuring the facts. How do they measure up against each other? Not having a predetermined bias and a predetermined outcome. That's not about meritocracy. That's about favoritism. And I guess in some twisted way, it's a reflection of our over-indexing seniority and tenureship. Now let's take that break. When we come back, we'll welcome the good lady. Stay tuned.
Transform your home with PCU Plus. From stylish furniture to the latest appliances, we have everything you need to create your perfect space. At PCU Plus, we offer fair prices and affordable financing options that are cheaper than hire purchase agreements. With convenient locations in San Fernando, Tobago, Arima, and our lifestyle showroom in Barataria, you're never far from the best deals. Visit PCU Plus today and discover why we're the top choice for quality furniture and appliances. PCU Plus. Quality you trust, prices you'll love. Visit one of our locations or find us online to start transforming your home today.
Maybe he landed here totally by coincidence. But if by chance he's admiring your fresh coat of Benjamin Moore soft sky blue, well, that's a pretty high compliment. Coming from an expert.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
This is 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson. The distance from where we should be in the world in going forward on our commitments with climate change.
The effects of climate change that cannot be accounted for, it's called loss and damage, and we're seeing loss and damage happening so much more in this decade and the previous decade.
The principal term there was this question of the correspondent banking issues.
That is why we're trying to build capacity with this country here, Trinidad and Tobago, and other countries in the region. Man is not showing any signs of stopping or even slowing down. More than half of the forest in Trinidad is already gone.
All the plants and all the animals and all of the nice clean water and fresh air and everything had to be on this planet for humanity to have a chance.
We have small change when it comes to countries that can take decisions, and when they speak, the world listens.
The General Assembly is a very democratic forum. And Trinidad and Tobago has the same vote as Canada, in spite of the obvious difference in size.
You are watching Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Just give an overview of what exactly is that split arrangement.
Nah, you don't need to register nothing. We can do that another time. But then it becomes a hit, and then everybody starts to want to claim.
The laws that predate many of the independent countries' constitutions are going to be those colonial laws.
We know there are an infinite amount of circumstances that would lead to a murder.
I have a great idea and I have a great concept, But until it's actually expressed, it does not become intellectual property.
Accomplishments or targets of a forensic accountant is to quantify what may have been lost.
They believe in different criminals and we manipulated the law and we exploiting the system.
A responsible journalist will reach out to the person who they have the information on for a comment.
And we're back here on Talking About the WESN. It is a whole new world. Is it? Kinda yes, kinda not really. However, now that I guess you could say that's out of the way, 2 of the 3 big elections that might affect our country have happened. Venezuela had their elections. America had their elections. Now, all we have to do is wait on our elections. And the road to 2025 started off bumpy with the UNC and now continues, I guess you could say, to be bumpy with the PNM. They're technically the big political story right now, whether we like it or not. And to continue the commentary, of course, and unpack some of the things that have happened within the last week, because depending on your point of view, one can consider quite a lot has happened within the last week. We have the good lady herself, Karen Shishera, joining me from our studio in Woodbrook. So, of course, she's going to look far better than I am. Karen, good morning. Good morning. Welcome to Talking Point. Or I wonder if really you should be telling me welcome to Talking Point, since you're there and I am all the way over here.
Yeah, all the way over there, just across the seas in Tobago. And no, I don't think I'm looking any better than you are, unfortunately for me. But I did want to come in the studio. You gave me the option. And I told you I wanted to come in. And the main reason is that I'm able to use my computer. And no, that is so. It is true. So that I don't have to make copious notes, you know. And then I say to you every minute, what did I write there? I can't understand what I wrote. So that's part of it. So
I'm sorry, I'm not there to help you with that this time.
No, but you don't have to this time because I do have. Hopefully, I'm going to rely on the topic at hand. Before I go into the topic at hand, which is, and the saga continues, and the saga, of course, is what is the convulsions that continue and the rumblings. It's more than rumblings. I think it's reached a point of convulsions within the PNM party, the government of the day. And I think that it requires look at, again, especially this week, given the developments that have occurred. And surprisingly for me, I have to say that because the PNM has been known for its discipline, it's you know, no matter what goes on behind the scenes, they could cuss and get on inside the within the confines of Ballet House or wherever they have a meeting. It is unusual for it to continue for so long. I think so anyhow, and to spill out into the media. Because I think one of the things that the PNM has always, and this is the government, and that's why we're speaking about them, because they are governing us, and therefore you look to them to give leadership in terms of statements like behavior, self-control. You know, you look for certain qualities, and they seem to be absent. As our Prime Minister, I don't know, he's in Barbados now, he was in Samoa the other day, he was in the United States the other day. I mean, I haven't tried to keep track of it, but it seems to be out a lot anyhow. But that's not the point. I just want to start first, because how can we not start just only to comment and not to analyze? Because I certainly don't think I am in a position to do that at this stage, but just for clarification, if persons wish that kind of clarification, which is the results of the American elections. We know that these votes, there's the Senate, there's the Congress, and then there's the election of the president. And sometimes the Senate or the Congress may not be controlled by the president, who is the head of the party that would have won the election as president. So what went on for the last 2 days is America has 538 electoral votes and it's spread across the 50-something constituencies, and some have more than others. So, for example, California has about 40. I think Texas has about 30 or 40. Being a good Trinidadian, not saying 40, I'm 30. But in any event, there are some that have more than others. But there are also those that may not have as many, but are what we consider to be swing states, you know, like how we have in Trinidad, allegedly, with places like Tunapuna and St. Joseph. Oftentimes people feel they can tell what the election results are going to be based on the results of those states, of those, in our country, those constituencies. So it is in America. So there are about 8, 9, what they call swing states, Pennsylvania being among them, I think South Carolina being among them, Michigan being among them. And so even though they may not have as many electoral votes to take to determine who is going to be president, because somebody has to take those votes, and the votes are based on what the constituents of the various states have voted who they want to be president. And they have to take those results to the Electoral College. And since I said there are 538 votes in total, and some states have more, some states only have 4 votes. At the end of the day, supposedly the person who is charged with that responsibility is going to follow through with the voting that has occurred in his state. And once you cross the 270 mark, you are the president, because there are 538. Do the maths. 270 multiplied by 2, you get 540. So once you pass the 270 mark, that is why even though they still haven't counted all the votes and votes are still coming in, it really doesn't make a difference. And they've actually said that he's the 47th president of the United States, because he has more than 276, at least when I left home, 276 electoral votes had already been counted for him. So that is why we can say he is the president of the United States. And so that's as much as I can say on that. The only last thing I will mention, because, you know, of course, they say when America sneezes, the rest of the world gets a cold. Okay, the geopolitics has changed a lot in the last few years, that is true, but America still is dominant. And, you know, even reading papers before I came here, you saw the concern of Trinidadians, many of us who have family living there, who are American citizens, have lived more of their life in America than in Trinidad, but still very much, you know, very concerned about what's going on, obviously, even as being American, but still have a loyalty to Trinidad in a sense. A lot of them were concerned that what a Trump win would mean in terms of if you were an immigrant or if you were a person of color. Of course, that's all based on things that he would have said. So we don't know what, you know, what's going to come down the line, and I'm not in a position to see that. But there is that concern. But what is of a greater concern, and I will probably speak about it next week, is that AmCham had made a statement some time ago. I'm trying to find it. AmCham president did say, this is the heading in the Trinidad Guardian, Trump victory bad for Dragon. Right? So, and the reason that would have been said, and I'm not going into discuss it in detail because I just, like I say it so many times, but the license and OFAC are 2 different things. We have the license, but what you need is the Office of Fixed Assets Control, which is the United States, to give you permission, so to speak, to buy their natural gas and pay for it in fiat, in money. America's strategy and tool has always been in fighting a war, has always been used to make sure that countries may comply by implementing so some people will see some very harsh measures that lock them out of use of their own assets. And the reality is, this is the reality, is that Shell, who was part of this whole development of the Dragon Field, which is 17 kilometers off of that oil, what you call it, I remember it begins with H and then it goes on my head. anyway, that comes into Trinidad and then goes out to the
hibiscus.
Hibiscus plant,
Yeah.
right? That's owned by Shell, and then NGC owns the pipelines. So the thing about it is, it's coming to an end in October, and Shell has not made a final investment decision. If they haven't made it now, and it's 2018, 2019, we're talking about Dragon Field, and we're going into 2025. You know, now with Trump winning, there is great concern. And that's not me saying that. It's coming from the CEO. Trump victory bad for Dragon Field. They said the return of Donald Trump as U.S. president following the American elections on November the 5th can negatively impact the natural gas negotiations with Venezuela. That's all I will say. So I'm leaving that alone.
I'll just want to add one thing I didn't think about. Professor Anthony Bryan brought up. There might be quite a lot of our nationals who are in America illegally. To America, the amount of Trinidadians and Tobagonians there might not be that significant. But what happens if he does manage to kick out a lot of illegal migrants? To some extent, what will be the consequences that we have to face now, having who knows how many people being forced back here, having to try to find employment, places to stay? Can we absorb it? Not entirely sure. Usually when America talks about illegal immigration, I don't really think Trinbagonians are included as a major source of the negatives that makes the press. So I don't know if our diaspora will be affected greatly or not. But what we do know is there's an expectation that his policy positions and legislative agenda will be a lot more quicker than his previous administration. So we might see how things unfold a lot faster than the last time, because basically, to oversimplify it, he's more experienced now after having a term. So we might get some answers, whether we like them or not, that remains to be seen. But moving on to the main topic, Karen.
The saga continues.
Saga of the PNM.
It does really, you know, because, well, we know we had the PNM, well, let me just say what has happened since then, since last week. One of the things, so you have to start from this perspective, at least that's his perspective, I think that a lot of people would take. One of the things PNM has been in as a party, and it is in government, has been known for party discipline. Regardless of what's going on inside internal turmoil or bacchanalia, which, you know, is par for the course in any case, in any party, one of the things they have been known to be able to keep it under covers, to keep a united front, at least when they're dealing with the public. And that's important because, obviously, if you want to form the government, you want to be able to come across as though you are measured, you have control, and you have support of your membership and of the key members of your leadership team. So, and we have always been known, that is, the PNM has always been known, as in we, I don't know if that's a Freudian slip, but it was not intended to be that. But we have always known that the PNM has had that reputation and has held it sacrosanct, I would say, as opposed to other opposition members who do not share that same opposition parties who do not have that same reputation. So what has happened since then, it comes back to one of the things the Prime Minister said as a headline was that Robert LaHunt, this is in the last week, Robert LaHunt is no senior counsel. I mean, why are you doing that? Why are you saying that? I mean, you're saying that because, from what I can gather, is that the internal elections, which were due to be held in November of this year, together with the convention, similarly, what would have happened? There would have been no change in terms of a voting in relation to the leader, the chairman, or the secretary of the party. But the screening committee, of course, the other members of the screening committees would be subject to challenge to be part of that screening committee. And so that internal elections may have seemed to be not much ado about nothing, But it's important because it is in the papers, it's written about, that Stuart Young is not the chosen one by the people of the party and the senior members of the party, if you have to rely on the newspapers. And so it has caused a lot of, using a Trump terminology, a lot of brouhaha. It's more than that, bacchanalia in the party. So what has happened is first they tried to give the impression all is well in the party. But there's an article by Anna Ramdas who was able to get the information that they had 140 members and only 76 members voted for what? What were they voting for? Because the decision to cancel the internal election as well as but mostly the internal elections was done without approval of the General Council. And it's ultra-virus, the PNM Constitution. So they came to ratify it. And according to the report from Anna Ramdas, 140 people attended, but a mere 70 persons cast in favor of a ratification. And 5 abstained and 1 voted against, and that was Baptiste. So, Baptiste Primus, Jennifer Baptiste Primus. So to come out of that and to give the impression that when you had that General Council meeting and you talked about the ratification as if all was well, all is not well. And clearly there was pushback from members of the party in relation to ratification. And ratification, as Martin Daly said, now another thing that came up too, so that's one thing, that we know that there's this whole thing. And apparently, I just read it today, that Foster Cummins left the head table, went into the, joined
on the floor.
Huh?
On the floor? Went
on the floor, and apparently what he had to say were some very rough things. And I know he can say some rough things because I have been, and I am not giving a view of him one way or the other, you know. I have witnessed it myself. When Mr. Manning, we lost the election in 2010, and Foster Cummins seemed to have been the person that they had, well, it seemed as though they had appointed him the spokesperson. And what he did, what he told the Prime Minister, the former Prime Minister, is what he forgot to tell him. He spoke to him as if he was a little boy. He spoke to him with a level of disrespect. He never cursed. He never did that. But he certainly gave him a tongue lashing. But it wasn't just a tongue lashing, but it was a tongue lashing that was to diminish him, and I was there, so nobody could tell me I heard somebody say that. I was there, I was in shock. So if Foster Cummins, who apparently came out and gave a picture like everything was all is well and good, and now you're hearing that he left the head table and went in the on the floor and had some choice words to say according to the report, then you understand it's a mirage. But that is not the real issue now, it's Jennifer Baptiste. Jennifer Baptiste has come out and said, that's the heading, she said, Jenny, too convoluted. What is she talking about? She is saying that in October, they had agreed, that the General Council had agreed that they would have the convention and the internal elections before the end of 2024 because it is PNM policy not to do that in the same year as you have national elections. So it was agreed that they would have both the convention and the internal elections in November, I think 24th of November, if I'm not mistaken. And that was what was agreed to. And then apparently the Prime Minister gave an interview a few days ago and seemed to have contradicted his own self by saying it's not good political strategy to have an election, internal election and a convention at this point in time, so close to a national election. And she said, well, you're sending a message that is contradictory. And she was very, very strong in what she said. I was taken aback by how strong her language was. I mean, she didn't beat around the bush. She said, Jennifer Baptiste has accused the Prime Minister, Dr. Keith Rowley, of giving a convoluted explanation for the postponement of the party's convention into election. She said the Central Executive and General Council, with the full knowledge of the PNM's tradition of not holding internal elections in the same year as a general election, had agreed to a recommendation of the leadership to hold the party's election and convention this year. And then she said that the announcement by the PNM leadership on October 19 came out of the blue. She said the reason the Prime Minister gave in his interview with the Express for the cancellation, that the party had a tradition of holding national elections and internal elections in the same year, was the very reason that was given to the General Council earlier this year as the rationale for holding the party election in November this year. She said earlier this year the leadership recommended the internal election be held this year. She stressed that part of the discussion and explanation that was brought to the Central Executive and then to the General Council was exactly what Dr. Rowley said, that it was not customary that the PNM go into a national election while at the same time engaging in internal elections. I mean, I could go on and on about what she said, but I think what I said there is enough to tell you that she took a very, very strong position and contradicted the Prime Minister and said, what are you saying? You're contradicting yourself. So the next thing they say now is that they're saying that how is she going to be sanctioned? This is in today's papers. A picture of her, PNM mom, on if Jenny to be sanctioned by the PNM. Officials of the PNM and mom on whether the General Council member, Jennifer Batiste, Prime Minister, has been spoken to or may face disciplinary action for her critique of the Prime Minister, Dr. Eric Williams' statement on why the party's convention was postponed. And look at this. Both Batiste Primus and PNM General Secretary Foster Cummins reportedly braced Dr. Rowley at PNM's October 19 General Council on Leadership Messaging Issues and the Convention Postponement. You hear who braced him too? Mm-hmm. And the one who come out smiling with him? Right? So you understand that what is going on, it is a continuing saga. And now we're seeing, and not only that, now we hear 5 opinions. I wrote them down. Oh, Rowley, I said, Robert Rowley said LeHunt playing senior counsel. Right? Because he obviously, he's saying that LeHunt obviously wants to offer himself. And if they don't do the screening, the internal elections for who makes up the screening committee, you know, its chances of being chosen may be diminished. I suppose that's what he's saying. But then you also have Ferdy Ferreira, which is very interesting because Ferdy Ferreira says he's been around since the days of Eric Williams. And in one breath, he's saying, you know, the PNM is doing for its democracy. And he said that at one time he recalled that there were 5 persons who they brought to the screening committee, and Eric Williams rejected the 5 persons, but they came back again. So when they came back again, he did allow them to have a seat and run for a constituency, which they won. But of the 5, not one of them got a ministerial post. That's what Ferdy Ferreira said. Understand this. Then you have the 5 articles in the Express. I always read it on a Sunday Express to see what the opinion of people that we, I think, respect, what they have to say. Every single one of them was critical of the Prime Minister and his leadership. Every last one of them. I'll give you just the heading. Well, the one that was the most muted, which is Rafiq Shah, which I'm not really surprised, but the heading was Need for Mature Leadership. That's a lot, for, in my opinion, for Rafiq Shah to have said. The king can do no wrong. Diminished, wounded nation. I think that is Ralph Mirage. The ultimate barbarian, Selwyn Kaju. And then you have Martin Daly talking about the ratification issue, saying ratification is where you have done something without authority and you're looking now to cure the defect or the lack of authority by having that decision ratified. And he talked about the wider dangers to our democracy. That is what he was talking about, the whole issue of and what he said? They, of course, strident PNM voices saying stay out of PNM business. Well, PNM business is our business, because guess who runs the country? Them. However, he said that Robinson Regis, a senior party figure, in the course of an attempt to smooth over the embarrassment of the two announcements, conceded the PNM is of great importance to Trinidad and Tobago, and therefore, quoting renowned CLRJ, the internal life of the party cannot be separated from its public responsibilities. So I think he's trying to say he contradicted himself, but that's not what he was focused on. He's really focused on the issue of the ratification, and gave a definition, I think, of what ratification means, that you are now trying to cure by, after the facts, an act without the authority, and the authority being the authority of the General Council, as I understood it. So if you think the matter is over, it is not over. Because I have never seen, I thought by last week everything would have calmed down and everybody would have gone in their corner and said, listen, this is not good for the party, eh? Because we're looking like, you know, a lot of the other parties who fight in the public. We can't be doing that. We're not known for that. But you see, they are this is my view, which might be wrong, but it's my view that they have very, very strong views against having Stuart Young, if that is the Prime Minister's choice. And what's her name, Riati, did an article in the Express, I think, over the weekend, one of the days saying, is Stuart Young the anointed, is Stuart Young the favored one, or something to that effect. So it's not me saying that. And I think there are very, very, very strong views. So the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So I don't know if, and all of them who are against it are, do not have aspirations to be themselves Prime Minister. But I do know that they seem united. And then, of course, the thing with Fitzgerald Hines in Laventille West that happened this week. I saw the video. They voted to see if they wanted him to represent them as the Women's League too, you know, the backbone of the PNM. And only one person voted for Fitzgerald Hines, and then somebody come out afterwards and say something about how it was some error, try to cover it up. But you cannot tell me all these things I just spoke about are developments that have happened within the last week. And clearly, in my respectful opinion, the other side, or other sides, are smelling the blood and the bloodletting. Is the PNM going to be able to contain it so that they can be the next government again, or not? But I suspect.
I wanted to bring up this point because as much as I understand the party has traditionally been very disciplined and keeps its stuff behind closed doors, to some extent, first of all, there have been times when the whole democratic process has been informally usurped by the whole, well, you were against me, I'll send you to be an ambassador here, I'll send you off into exile there. But more importantly, how the current administration came to power, I would argue to some extent some of their issues were made public. And I don't know if it really should hold true to the current administration of the PNM that they are as disciplined as previous generations, because at the end of the day, it was a messy situation that led to Patrick Manning's downfall. And then on top of that, I do think, as you brought this up, you were questioning whether or not some of the dissidents might have ambitions to be the political leader. I do think that's a big part of it. Dr. Rowley had ambitions to be political leader. He had an issue with Mr. Manning. It probably was a factor in Mr. Manning's administration coming to an end with the snap election, and he became the new political leader. And there hasn't really been much beyond that with regards to succession planning. Who would come next after Dr. Keith Rowley was always a question. And with no clear answer, the door is open for people with similar ambitions to him to strike now while the iron is potentially hot, to make use of the opportunity, because there's no clear favorite. And I think you're right. to think that Stuart Young could somehow be appointed and that people in this situation could accept that, I'm not sure how wise that is, to be honest, from the jump.
Okay, I want to tell you 3 things in response to what you said. It is true that many persons have fallen out of favor with the former Prime Minister, and for good reason, in my respectful opinion, but I'm not free to say but let me just say he would be of the view that he had good reasons, and it certainly was not out of jealousy or envy. That I will say. That as much that as I will say that. And how did he deal with it? No bacchanal, and they didn't make any bacchanal anyway. They went very quietly to Canada to be thing. They went very quietly. They vexed, but they went very quietly. You didn't hear any bacchanal. There might have been rumblings inside, and they might have done what they had to do, but they didn't make it into a bacchanal. They took the positions, and they went their way. So that's a different thing. This is not what's going on now. Secondly, with regard to the opposition, the Keith Rowley becoming the leader of the opposition, I can tell you as a fact that he was not easily accepted. I can tell you that as a fact. There were many of them who are sitting right there right now, who were very much against him being the opposition leader, because they had the aspiration for themselves, that's number 1, or number 2, and they did not feel that he was the right person, and a lot of them still had loyalty to Mr. Manning, a combination of factors. But I could tell you, if you think that everybody sat down on the PNM side and said, we want Rowley, that is not true at all. At all. Okay, so that's the second thing. The third point I want to make is regards to the ambition to be the leader. You see, the problem that in my view, Dr. Rowley has created for himself, and I think his base feel aggrieved about and even betrayed about, is the issue of race and colorism and status and money and all of that are very, very sensitive issues, especially for a party, just like the opposition, who built its base from the poor and those who were disenfranchised. So who does he surround himself with? Let us be honest. He sent Amy Brown, went to Brazil very quietly and took how many years in Brazil? What her name is, because I always forget her name. Robinson Regis went off to Canada, nice and quiet, right? And they went nice and quiet. Whatever we thought. Penelope Beckles went to United Nations, nice and quiet. The Minister of Social Security, Social Welfare, Donna Cox, he sent us, I think, to Florida, nice and quiet. They take it, and they came back. And when they learned their lesson, he gave them, in my view, okay, now you learn your lesson, now I'll give you a portfolio, right? But the difference is this. Since I said, what is the leadership team? Optics is a lot. Who is he surrounding himself with? He's surrounding himself with people who do not look like the base, number 1. And number 2, who seem to come from privileged backgrounds. And not one of them, but all of them. Every last one who he has, that people would say are the ones with the most amount of power within a cabinet, all of them share something in common. They don't look like the base, they are not from the base, and they are all from privileged backgrounds. And so there is a sense of betrayal. I believe that people feel you could have 1 or 2, but when all of them have the same, if you have to give them a CV, I mean, doing their CV for all of them, the CV could run the same for all of them. And that is not what and that hurts the people. And it's hurting the people who are challenging him right now, because you notice the people who are challenging him, none of them look like any of them who the Prime Minister has surrounded himself with, and none of them appear to have come from privileged background, even if they would eventually be created wealth for themselves. None of them came from that, right? That is the challenge. Those are the challenges to what is going. So don't you see a challenge of race, a challenge of elitism? No, but more than that, elitism, a challenge of class, a challenge of money, and the perception that this government has kowtowed to a handful of persons who seem to have all the wealth in the country, whilst those who voted them in are still suffering.
Well, and then there's also the fact that I find this interesting. The Minister of Finance, Common, he has indicated, you know, he's not as old as the Prime Minister. There were thoughts maybe he might retire. He has said, no, he's not. He's going to have his 11th budget reading. You know, all right. I mean, it'll be interesting to see what his, I guess you could say, ambitions are based on what he will do and say leading up to this. Because it seems as though right now, he's not necessarily directly speaking on it, but he is one of the senior part of the executive, you know, one of the most tenured politicians there. And we have already had one caller point out and give the opinion that he may or may not have egged on or influenced or not fully assisted Stuart Young during that hot mic incident where he was all laughing and while Stuart Young essentially did the action that was the single most damaging action he has done to his own political career in that moment.
Yeah.
You know, the Minister of Finance was kind of like half joking, half concerned. One caller outright said he thinks that he set up Stuart Young. And I think you may have concerns of similar. I myself have concerns as well, just because.
I don't want anybody suing me for defamation. Because I will just say that I will not give, I will just leave it that I will leave it for the public, which I'm sure the public has come to their own conclusion about how that whole thing transpired. And but, that I will have to leave it like that. Let me go in a different
direction then. The fact that he's staying probably is an indicator that at some point he's going to get involved, or he is already involved behind the scenes, and publicly he will be more involved at some point, I would imagine.
Well, what I will say is this. I don't think that Minister Imbert took it lightly that he has not been given to act as Prime Minister for the last how many times. I don't think, because that's an indication that you have fallen out of favor and that you are definitely not it gives that perception. And I don't think one can underestimate the ambition, right or wrong, everybody entitled to have ambition. And he is one of them, I imagine, having been there all those years. And, you know, he's an experienced, let's put it this way. I'll put it this way. I was inside there. I'll just say he's a very experienced politician.
Yeah.
That I will just say he's a very experienced politician. And you can interpret that to mean whatever you want it to mean. But I do know if he says he is not giving up, so therefore he's in the running, he wants to be in the running, for what? For what? The only thing he could be in running to make sure is that he has to be the Prime Minister if he wants to be able to say what ministerial portfolio he has, right? And he is, if he is in the running, he's saying he's in the running, then let's put it this way, it seems that there is a united position against Stuart Young. And it's not without reason, because I didn't do this on this show. I did it on another show, and I don't have time to do it on this show. But I did look at his record when he was in Minnesota. I went to Parliamentary Channel, and I looked at his record in terms of national security. It was not good. They had more crimes, serious crimes, murders, serious offenses, minor offenses, significantly, except in 2020 when it fell off. But in 2020, that's when he went to energy. But for 2018 and 2019, there was a huge spike in all of those areas. And that information came from CSO. I did not create it. It came from CSO. And also, as Minister of Energy, it's been a hopeless case. In fact, I have some of it right here. They said the total, when they totaled all the crimes between 2018 to 2019, they said that in 2015, it was 30,897. When he was Minister of National Security in 2018, I don't know what month, it was 42,990. That included serious crime, minor crimes, and minor offenses. And in 2019, when he was still Minister of National Security, it was 39,098. And it dropped off in 2020 with COVID and all of that. It dropped off. When it came to murder, it was 2015, 420. I will say when I was Minister of Finance in 2008, until recently, 538 was the highest recorded murder rate. So I come in and seeing it up front. But in 2015, it was 420. When he was the Minister of National Security in 2018, it was 517. And in 2019, it was 539. And then it dropped off in 2020. So if I have to look at his, and then when I looked at his record as Minister of Energy, it's terrible. It's all those, I wrote them down. I went to the Ministry of Energy's website, but I had to get the information from the central bank, who said they got it from the Ministry of Energy. And when you look at the data, except, and I want to be fair to him, with the unitization of 2, 3, and 4 train, so that we have 10% share in it. Not only the 10% share, but also apparently there was the view, or it was stated, that what would happen is that the LNG would leave to a low price destination, but somewhere along the way, it would go to a high price destination, and we would not be the wiser because we were not involved in 2 and 3. But this man said we had train 1 was alive and well, and he knew it wasn't true. And that's the same thing that's going on with Dragonfield. What are you talking about Dragonfield for when OFAC, when you see Trump now is the president? Let's see what's going to happen. Stop telling people things that at every single area, I wrote it down and I got it from the central bank. So I am not making up these numbers. I took it from the central bank because I want to make sure that when I say something, they cannot come and say that Teixeira make it up. You mightn't like what Teixeira is saying, but but Teixeira did not make it up. In petrochemicals, methanol, urea, UAE, melanin, I mean, tremendous collapse since he is the minister in 2020 compared to the previous years. I think I started in 2015. When we looked at natural gas, well, you know the natural gas gone down to 2.4, 2.4 when we need 4.1, and it fell under him too, because it used to be 3.5, 3 point something, then it went down. Yeah, under him, it has been the lowest it has ever been. That's natural gas. When you look at the barrels of oil, crude oil, it's gone down from, when he started, 50-something thousand to 40-something thousand. That was the last figures I saw. So if I had to, and then also the you know, those competitive round bids, oh gosh, the one for the deep water, they went out with 17 of them. I think only 4 out of the 17 were taken. But God, Minister, don't go after me if I got that number wrong. But in the onshore and shallow, same failure. On the onshore, same failure. Where you succeed as Minister of Energy, where you succeed as Minister of National Security, where you succeed.
Well,
what give you
Karen,
the right? And then you're cussing and getting on like if you are some kind of most unstatesmanlike conduct for somebody who wants to rule. And for my grandchildren and my children to hear, my grandchildren more, children big now, my grandchildren to be hearing you talk like that. That's your mind.
Well, with that, we're going to have to cut it there because we're going to run out of time for the call-in segment. We need to give the people at least a few minutes to call and have their say.
Fair enough.
So We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll open the phone line. Stay tuned to Talking Point, folks. This is WSN's. We'll be right back after this.
If these walls could talk, they'd cry uncle. They didn't plan to become offices or yoga studios. But they've stood by us, even when we got a little stir-crazy. For that, they deserve some thanks. They deserve Benjamin Moore.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
And we're back here. This is Talking About on WESN. We have our face caller for the morning, so we'll go straight in. Mr. Diego Martin, good morning. You're on the air. Hello?
Minister of the PNM. Good morning to both of you all.
Morning.
Karma has spoken in the U.S. Trump has won the full suite. Senate, House, Presidency, and the very important one, the popular votes. So what that tells you the people had their say. They wanted Trump, like it or don't like it. How does Trinidad respond to that? And are we boxing from the policies the current government had followed? For example, when you have an acting prime minister goes on a political platform and say, we are the best friends of Maduro, didn't the Americans hear that? When you had a former...
Paul, you're breaking up a little bit.
Yeah, well, not moving on a landline, so we had to blame TSTT. When you had a former Republican ambassador to Trinidad, Mondelo made certain statements. You had the PNM and by extension, Keith Christopher Rowley clapping back hard. Those things, the Americans, because they have continuity in their policies, they will remember that. And all of that is what we are doing. We are hiding and facilitating sanction leaders and sanction entities coming into the country and lying to the population. I have to use the word lying. How can we get out of that hole now? I mean to say we have expended a lot of money. You remember I have a fella who's a lobbyist named Art Collins? How much have we budgeted for him now to get another phone call to Trump? Trump will say, you had to pay plenty money to your teeth, boy. I hope it's not $3 million. It could be $6 million for me to talk to you because I have already made a statement.
Caller. I might have to ask you to try the other line.
The other line not working, the 9376.
Because we're losing too much of what it is you're saying. So can't really make a determination.
You in Tobago having problems because I hear him very clearly, I'm sure.
You heard him very clearly?
Very clearly.
Well, then caller continue. Caller continue. I'll just have to suffer through it. I'll figure it out. All right, we lost the caller. I'm so sorry. Apparently, it's my fault. I don't know what it is because I'm not hearing Karen break up, so I'm not entirely sure why.
By hearing him, he was clear. I was very clear. I didn't hear him break up.
Well, I don't know if you could reiterate some of the points that he made because
there were some key moments. He made some very good points. He said that Trump has won the Congress, he's won the Senate, he won the popular vote, and so now he's in control. And he said, what did we do to ourselves? We made statements in support of Maduro. We have taken in a lot of illegal immigrants into this country. And I think we have antagonized America in so many ways in relation to Venezuela, which of course is one of America's enemies. And so how is that going to help us now as we go forward in the energy sector? It is, he says that that's what we are paying a price, we're going to pay a price.
One thing though, I don't think the House race, the Republicans in the lead, but they don't have a clear majority yet. That is,
what would they use?
They say it's going to take some while. Yeah. But they did gain a seat. Apparently, they did gain a seat. The Democrats have lost one seat, but the results aren't fully out yet. We do have Dabity on the line. Good morning, caller. You're on the air.
Very pleasant morning, Sean. Morning, Karen. Apparently, your ratings go up whenever you all bash the PNM. So kudos to your station. With respect to the American election, I want to say that full democracy at work. It is my opinion that Trump stole the election. This is something he has been planning for years, and he was rather successful. All right. This time I said it is my opinion. Karen is shaking her head. I'm saying it is my opinion.
Yeah. What do you mean exactly by stole?
Yeah. But yeah, how do you mean he stole it in truth?
Yeah. That there were fraudulent things that took place. You know, you all mightn't believe it, but right here in Trinidad and Tobago, Karen, the year you went up and lost to Anel, I reported, listen carefully, I reported to the EDC that somebody handed the returning officer a bag at the licensing office. It was reported. I gave the returning officer a bag to the gate after the elections were finished. It was reported to ABC and nothing came out of it. There were reports that people were bussed into Carapo. Nobody did anything about it. These are not things that I heard, you know. These are things that I knew, and Karen knew that I was on the ground. So there are many things that happen fraudulently for elections, and people get through with it. There were people right here in the St. Augustine area that were arrested for fraudulent happenings. There are persons, sometimes you check ballots and there are extra ballots. How do they come about having extra ballots? So just my opinion about Trump's preparation, and I don't think that anybody who could commit a sacrilegious act against the White House in America and still become president, something is wrong with that country, and as the Bible says, America will fall, you know? So back here to the local politics, I mean, it is what it is, as you all said, with respect to what is happening in the PNM, but not everything that Karen and you are reporting are totally true. There was something about what the previous caller said pertaining to Dr. Rowley, and Dr. Rowley's stance with Venezuela was always what CARICOM stance would be. He never came out and gave up anything saying Trinidad and Tobago towards Venezuela. It was always what CARICOM said. So I think I would have contributed quite enough. I mean, wonderful program as usual, and you all have a pleasant day.
Thank you, caller. We do have a caller waiting, but I'll just want to point out, it was said, because the results potentially would be that close, this is going to be a question that I don't think we'll ever really get an answer for with regards to being able to accept the results, regardless of who won. So that's one of the other things coming out of this election, to see how it's going to be handled now. Because I do think, though, the voting patterns do indicate, to me, probably not too much bad faith actions happened, but I can't say that with any degree of certainty. Hiding behind current composition is up to interpretation by the US government. I don't know if they will accept that or not. So I understand though that, yes, perhaps the caller from Diego Martin, how he framed it was not necessarily the most accurate way to frame it, but it still could be interpreted that way. We have Shagonas on the line. Good morning, caller, you're on here.
Good day. This question is for Karen, because I haven't gotten any property tax notification, but I understand that the present role they're supposed to have of taxpayers is supposed to be online. Now, I haven't seen it. I don't know where you could see it. So I thought it would be a simple idea to go to my address, because as I know, with the modern system that you was working on, you will be able to query something from the location or from the owner, or if you have an assessment number, things like that. Why it is you cannot do that? You have any idea?
Yeah, well, I think to answer your question, I think part of the reason, because I did ring the Valuation Division, actually, in concern about where I live. Oh, not where I live, not where I live, it's not where I live. But in any event, I had not gotten an assessment, and I was getting concerned because of, well, I knew he was going to push it back. I knew he was going to, but I just didn't want to see that, because then, you know, I didn't want to get myself involved in the thing. But I knew he had to push it back. And when I spoke to the person, whose name I knew, I can remember, I made a mental note, she was very pleasant. What she did say to me is, she looked it up, she actually was very nice to me, and gave me my she gave me the identification thing. She says, we haven't reached you all as yet. So the reason why you are not finding it is because they haven't reached it, and which is why the minister keeps pushing it back to now December. What they're looking for is money. If I was in government, and they're looking for money because they don't have revenue. So
why they don't collect the money people owe in them?
Well, no, but I'm just telling you, well, that is the choice they're using. The choice at this moment is the property tax. So the reason why you have not gotten it is the same reason I have not gotten it, because when I spoke to the person, she said, we have not reached yours yet.
But how couldn't we reach yours yet when you was there, the thing was practically completed?
No, well, that's not true. That would not be true. What was true is this. We knew that a lot of persons would not come forward, and we knew we did not have a complete rule, but we didn't have the requirement that was put into the legislation that you don't send over the rule to the minister until you have gotten 50% or more of the residential. That was not there in our legislation. But we knew that what was going to happen is that eventually we would have gotten nearly everyone. It was a matter of taking time. So we didn't expect in the first year that everybody would have come forward. But we expected with the passage of time, when they realized they'd have to pay a penalty, when a neighbor go in and tell on them, when they could go and inspect the public books, which they're entitled to do under the old legislation, under our legislation, people would have come and told on their neighbor, and eventually we would have gotten it. And the last point I want to make is, at least when we were in government, the focus wasn't so much on tax collection and revenue collection, because this government is in real trouble. If you don't understand, they're in real trouble. They don't have any foreign exchange reserve or option. They rely on energy, and look what's happening with energy. So what we were doing was a transformation of the property tax collection and computerizing. But we don't have time to go into all of that. But that is, we understood it would have taken time. And those who would have gotten bills that they could have paid through ICNTT, paid through the normal way they pay all the other bills. We understood that.
As a country, we're bad at digitization. It's not just a PNM thing. And then I think that 50% threshold is part of the problem. That might be why, I'm not sure for certain, but I believe I read somewhere or heard somewhere that might be why the published rules, because the professor brought this up, the rules are supposed to be published. Why don't we see it? They might not have reached the 50% threshold to actually get to the point to implement certain things.
No, Sean, because Valuation Division, according to the thing they passed, that they are not supposed to send over the roll for the thing until they reach the 50%.
No, well, the
so
reason why I say
how
I
do they
don't
have
know
it
if it's
at
for
all?
sure.
How do they have it at all?
The reason why I say I don't know if it's for sure, Karen, is because I don't know if they've reached the 50% mark or not. I'm assuming they haven't, since they haven't done certain things.
But what they have reached to is that they have no money, right?
Yeah.
Because they take enough money out to the HSF. They have borrowed bonds up to the wazoo, so we don't have any foreign exchange. That's what you know. 43% cost of food has gone up by 43% according to Dr. Roger Hossain, or negative 90% growth. That's what this government has done. Pauperize this country and fail to create other revenue streams for this country. That's what this country. So they have, now that things have reached the boiling point with the energy sector, now they're looking to set up to tax the local person, to increase inflation and pauperize the population. That is what they want to do.
Now, I'll just close by saying this. I understand. I don't know if bashing the PNM gives us more ratings. I have no idea. There's a chance that it doesn't, to be honest.
PNM, bashing the government?
Well, that's the thing, right?
I mean, we're not bashing the government, we're criticizing the government. Why can't we? No, if I was on CNN, I couldn't say it.
Well, because, I mean, I myself understand the negatives, the negatives of being overcritical, right? Ironically, because I think certain media houses in the States were overcritical of Donald Trump. So when he went away and he lost in 2020, their programming suffered because they didn't know what else to do. That's all they did for 4 years, right? Now, with that said, the thing is, we have to ask ourselves, has the government done enough bad things that this is warranted? And maybe you could say no, maybe you would say yes. As of right now, they are the incumbent. There are a lot of bad results that I don't think is popular. So it is what it is. There's a reason why at times, despite all my criticisms for the TTPS, I try to highlight positive things about the TTPS. Despite all my criticisms for the government, I try to highlight ministers who I think do positive things, or when they communicate positively, when they have positive policy decisions for the government. And I have disagreed with colleagues with regards to certain things about the PNM, like with major aspects, but not completely, but the Ministry of Health and the work they did in particular over the COVID pandemic, not so much the border security of the lockdown. So
I agree with you with that.
We try to balance it. Yeah, we try to balance it.
Sean, can
but I think, as Karen might agree with me, we've reached the point where there's so many bad things to talk about the PNM.
Not only that, it's not that we have so many bad things to talk about. I am not going digging it up and looking for it, you know. I pick up I open up my computer and I read the news. And all I see is, what am I seeing? I'm seeing a trend. And I have to understand that I was in government. Hopefully I understand. Hopefully that my purpose here is to look at the trend. Now, if the trend stop, if that trend stop, I will stop talking about it.
This is one of the things that started to concern me. The fact that the news coming about the government, the trends were getting more and more negative. And as much like, you want to be balanced, but you can't force it. Now, that being said, we're out of time. We have to make way. Our programming has a schedule. Don't miss Dollars and Cents coming up here. One of our brand new shows on WESN coming up at 10 a.m. this morning. To all our callers, thank you. Mr. Digger Martin, I apologize. I don't know exactly what the audio issues were. Karen Shara, of course, thank you for joining me and sharing your experience, as always. A political insider, not insider.
Please don't use that word.
Some inside experience, not really a biased insider. So
I hope so. I don't think so.
Perspective.
I don't think I am. But that's of course my opinion. I mean,
right.
You don't see yourself.
So thanks, Karen. With that said, make today a good day, as Mr. Shaw will always say, and remember your allegiance to the Republic. I will continue saying party politics as we know it currently probably needs to go, but it's not so simple. I will admit that. But with that said, folks, stay safe. We will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
WESN.
The home of Caribbean content is growing, and we welcome you to be a part of the #1 platform for young personalities who are driven to make a positive impact in society. As we continue to reach every corner of Trinidad and Tobago through our daily broadcasts, our social media pages, or through our 75+ digital billboards across the nation, contact us to learn about our competitive rates via marketing at wesncc.com or call us at 628-5835.